I'm now very pleased to be able to introduce United States Senator Jeff Sessions. Senator Sessions has represented the people of Alabama for more than 18 years. Senator Sessions is known throughout the country as a strong advocate for the rule of law and an unwavering supporter of America's men and women in uniform. He believes in limited constitutional government that allows Americans to fulfill their highest dreams. Senator Sessions is the chairman of two key Senate subcommittees, Strategic Forces on the Armed Services Committee, as well as Immigration and the National Interest on the Judiciary Committee. He is also a senior member of the Senate Budget Committee and the Environmental and Public Works Committee. Senator Sessions was elected as Alabama's Attorney General in 1994 and was first elected to the Senate in 1996. He was just elected to a fourth term in 2014. Senator Sessions is also a senior advisor to Donald Trump. It is my honor to introduce Senator Jeff Sessions.
Thank you all. It is good to be here today and appreciate this discussion that you're having. We're having a number of discussions, I think, in America today over the economy, the impact it's having on mainstream America, how well people are actually doing, how well America is doing, the threats that we face, and whether or not we need to reevaluate some of the things we've been doing to make America great again. That would be a good goal for us, I think. Well, you know, we're going to have a great panel following me to talk about trade, and I won't try to compete with them on expertise and economic expertise and so forth, but I would just say this. Let me give you my perspective of where we are. My staff has told me I voted for every trade agreement that's come along. I think it's 13 since I've been in the Senate. Surely I thought maybe I voted against one of them, but I voted for them all. I drank the Kool-Aid. I listened to the Chamber of Commerce. I go to the fundraisers. I read the Wall Street Journal. And you know, you don't have to read them. 5,000-page TPP, don't bother to read it. It's a trade agreement. You're for it, right? We gave you money, you know. We are in Wall Street, and we can move our money and put it in emerging markets here and put it on there. And that's the way it all is, and this is the way the world works, and get with it. Don't be a nativist or an extremist or some sort of dragging a troglodyte or something like that. And so that's kind of the way my life was. No such thing as a bad trade agreement. If they cheat and they dump their products here, I said on the floor after I had a conversion experience, the Wall Street Journal said we should send them a thank you note, right? Giving us a cheap product. Never mind that it closes an American factory forever. They won't come back, and we lose a manufacturing base and capability that's there. The theory is it always works, right? But I am worried about it. Things aren't working as well as I believe have been projected, and certainly that's the mood of the American people. They're not happy either. Things aren't going well for them. So we've been given grand promises about all these agreements, how they're going to work. The computer models and the projections have promised every time grand benefits from trade agreements. And we're not going to end trade. We should never end trade. Trade is good. We are a trading nation. We believe in that. But we have to be careful, in my opinion. In 2000, I guess one of the big ones, I remember worrying about it a bit. The most favored nation, permanent normal trading relationships with China. At that point, we had an $83 billion trade deficit with China. What they promised us was that the deficit would not increase, that we would both benefit equally, create more jobs in the United States, open markets in China, and it was going to be great for the United States. But the deficit with China since 2000, 15 years, has increased more than fourfold to $367 billion. That's a lot of lost jobs, and data has been produced about how many jobs that is. I supported the Korean trade agreement, the last big one in 2011. We've got a Korean automobile plant in Alabama. They're good political allies in the world. We have great relationships with the good Korean people, and I voted for that one. They promised that we would see an $11 billion export increase to Korea, and that would be consistent with their increases of imports to us. The trade deficit would not increase, and we would all be better off for it. And that was the theory that it was sold on. Well, the truth is we had, this past year, we had a lower export amount to Korea than in 2011. Their increases to us have been $15 billion, and the trade deficit with South Korea has more than doubled. So this is not a little bitty matter. Some of this is significant. We're hearing the same promises about the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We're going to increase exports, Mr. Froman says, $350 billion. It's going to create 800,000 new jobs. It requires us to think this through. I'm a lawyer. You know, I've think about it a little bit here in recent years. I don't just represent business. I don't represent the financial side of business. I don't represent just the manufacturing side of business. I represent my constituents. In effect, we represent 300 million American people. That's who our loyalty is to. The business interest, their loyalty is to their stockholders. Their duty is to try to maximize gain for their stockholders. It's clear to anybody who thinks it through, it seems to me, that our interests aren't coterminous. They're not the same. My duty is to try to protect America, America's vitality, its manufacturing base, the well-being of the American worker, and how it's happening out there in the real world. And theories, after a while, aren't so perfect. As I've gotten older, I've learned a few things, like you can't hand a constitution to some third world undeveloped country and expect they're going to be a democratic republic next week. You can't take the view that all trade agreements are going to work out perfectly. What's in those agreements does make a difference to me. So why is it? So it's not working out well, I think. I know the good advantages that Mama can get cheaper products at the Walmart and those kind of things, and that's not wrong. I mean, that's true. Mother can buy cheaper products and all, but in general, the health and strength of the American manufacturing remains critical to a great nation. I do not see how we can be a great nation without a manufacturing base. And with our lower energy prices, thank you, we've got lower energy prices, and we've got a great work ethic in America. We work so much, a lot longer than Europeans do. We're willing to hustle and do those kind of things, but we need to protect it and make sure that we're heading in the right direction. So people are losing confidence, I'm telling you, in all this theory. They don't believe it's working well. Last year, a poll, Bertelsmann Foundation in Germany did a poll, said 55% of Germans favored the TTIP. That's the Atlantic European-U.S. trade agreement that would follow the TPP. That's the next big one. All advanced through this single fast-track vote. It was 55% favored it in Germany, and today it's 17%. So there's been a collapse in support of the agreement in Europe. And I was at a Brussels conference earlier this year, and the lady from Europe, who's the top negotiator, was worried about it. I said, well, why don't you just agree on a few things and not the big things? She said, well, that could cost us as much support as the big one. So this whole thing is being questioned by the American people. Some of you are probably familiar with the World Bank chart that shows what's happening to incomes around the world. It's commonsensical if you think about it. It seems like to me it's probably what's happening. They show that poor countries and poor people in the world have shown a nice increase for a number of years, 20 years or so, in their incomes. And the chart drops when it gets to the incomes of middle American and developed world middle class. Theirs go down, and as the chart continues its wealth thing, it goes straight up on the rich at the end. And I think that's probably what's happening in the world. So we've got angst, unhappiness, and concern in the developed world that their interests are not being effectively defended while everybody else is making progress. So I think their angst, their frustration level is not unwise. I think it's founded on reality. Also, I have a belief that the era of the nation state is not over. Globalism has certain advantages, but we are a long way away from reaching a point in world history that we abandon the concept of the nation state. And you can see that's what happened with Brexit. People know about who's protecting the UK's interest, who's protecting our interest, what is Brussels doing about us. We've lost control of our interest, our ability to protect our people and the values we share, and we prefer to return to that. So I think that's a lesson for all of us. And many of these trade agreements that have been projected under the fast track that we passed, the TPP and the TTIP and the Trade and Services Agreement, I think diminish sovereignty. So we would go in under the Trade Promotion Authority with an agreement in which the Sultan of Brunei, with an economy of 15 billion, I think, we have an $18 trillion economy, we go in there and they get the same vote in the TPP Commission as the President of the United States gets. The Sultan of Brunei gets the same vote. And this is not, to me, commonsensical. The United States is a unique nation. It has great strengths. It does not need to unilaterally, voluntarily turn over segments of its sovereignty to other nations that are minuscule in comparison. We have world responsibilities. They always want us to fix all the world problems, and so they want us to do all that. But how are we going to do it without an economy that can sustain our ability to maintain a military and an international presence? So we need to be jealous about it. We need to protect our people, our nation, our national interests first. And the people that sit in the towers in New York City and the Manhattan and who lost sight of that don't need to be running America. They don't get to run America. They got one vote. Steel worker in Alabama's got one vote. And paper workers, one vote. So that's what I feel about it. I don't think that, well, you're just some nativist, you're populist. Well, is that a populist or is that just common sense? Who is it that we represent? I had my judge on the Alabama Supreme Court, great judge, Harvard graduate, he said, there's nothing wrong with honest populism. Populism got a bad name, he said, but nothing wrong with honest populism. Well, I think that's an honest statement of what the interests of the United States and the American people are. So I'm worried about the Pacific Union. We do not need to put ourselves in that position. And we have discovered how they've cleverly written that agreement so that the President of the United States, and I won't go into the details, but basically can sign an agreement like the Paris Peace Accords and have this commission enforce it and put us in a position where the United States may even be bound by it and subject to Trans-Pacific Partnership sanctions if we don't agree with the global warming Paris Accord agreement. It's really in there. So it creates one more level of authority and power that places Congress clearly at a lesser level with regard to that than before. Well, Donald Trump has been clear about it. His instincts, I think, are right about this. He's traveled the world. He's got business all over the world. He's not against trade. He's not against lawful immigration, but he's pushing back and defending the American interest, I believe, correctly in these things. Senator McConnell has indicated he will not bring up the TPP during the lame duck, so that ought to be the end of that. Former Secretary Clinton, after 43 times saying she favored the Trans-Pacific Partnership, has now waffled, but has certainly not closed the door on some sort of system to get something passed. So I think at this point in time, we just need to say no. Now, I remember, many of you might, but I remember the debate some 4 years ago in the primaries in Iowa. Romney was debating, and he made this statement that I think is solid. It went something like this. If you don't stand up to China, they'll run over you. If you stand up to them, they say, that'll cause a trade war, right? But he said, we're in a trade war, we're just not fighting. And finally, he said this. This is the most important thing. And anyway, they have more to lose than we do. I'm just asking you, couldn't we buy trinkets from Mexico, the Philippines, South Korea, whatever? Do we have to buy all of our stuff from China? Would it be bad if we lost our market to China? That we didn't buy anything from them? Yes. But when you negotiate, you have to know what your leverage is. So they have a lot more to lose than we do. So the idea that the United States can't insist that our trading partner, like a China, has an honest currency that does not steal our trade secrets and our manufacturing data, that does not unfairly demand all kinds of constraints on our exports and our investments in China. We have the power to do this. We're not hopeless. You just got to have the guts enough to stand up to them and tell them. Just like, when a lot of these ambassadors from Europe and the NATO countries, especially the little ones, come by to see me. I said, well, Mr. Trump just said you got to pay your fair share. Yeah. We're doing a little better. I said, you've been saying you're going to do better for 30 years. You hadn't done better. Why should we go to war over you if you won't even meet 2% of your GDP on defense, and we're at 3.6% of GDP on defense? You just want to call Washington, and we're going to take care of it every time, and you get the freeload on the system? I said it nicer than that. But he knew. He didn't get mad about this. He knows this is true. He knows all of them in Europe know they need to do better, but they're not going to do better until they have to. It's the way the world works. And so I think in trade likewise, we've got to make sure we know what our leverage is, what our strength is. I think Donald Trump knows how to do that, and I think we'll make progress and create more jobs, more manufacturing, and make America a stronger country if we do that. So maybe we spend too much time in fundraisers and hearing the wails and whines of our good business colleagues that make America so fabulous as a country, I have to admit. But we kind of lose sight of where we are there. Well, another factor. Most of the studies that evaluate the impact of a trade rely on this computer modeling system, I can't remember the name of it, CCE. Peterson uses that model also. A group of professors at Tufts University did a report recently that pointed out some of the problems with this analysis, this model. It assumes for 15 consecutive years that unemployment never gets higher than 4%. It assumes that trade and all will go equally. Once the treaty is signed, that whatever the trade deficit rate is won't get worse. Well, neither one of those are likely assumptions. Matter of fact, they're unlikely assumption totally. We haven't had 4% in a long time. I don't think we're going to see 4% in a long time. And I think that's one of the flaws. And so if that's the basis of the argument that all the trade agreements are good, I believe we're probably not on the right path. So I would suggest, I wrote the president recently asking about the TPP, and we didn't really get a straight answer from it. We asked, if we sign this agreement, what will it do to wages for working Americans? What will it do for manufacturing and job creation in America? And what will it do to the trade deficit? Is it going to be like the other trade agreements? The deficits get worse. We've lost 5 million manufacturing jobs since 2000. Is this a trend we're going to continue on? I'm afraid it is with TPP. So therefore, I maintain a firm opposition to it. The fundamental value we need to ask is, does it advance the interests of the United States? And then Trump said that. Well, that's what they do. They defend their interest. When they do a trade agreement, why aren't we more effectively defending our interest? That is the question. Also, particularly in our Asian trading partners, and good allies, many of them, they are ruthless mercantilists. They're not free market people, essentially. They're mercantilists. So they want to sell more to us. They lust after the American market. They want to sell to the American market and get our dollars. And then they want to maintain as much of their own market for their own manufacturing base and create jobs in their country to benefit their country that way also. And they create, some of them are maybe institutional, been there for generations, but it's hard to sell in those markets. They float it out there as if we can sell into them, but when the dust settles, we're not selling into their markets, and they're taking more and more of our market share. And some of the countries, and I think China is part of them, they seek to diminish and attack certain American industries, knowing that our government is not going to particularly defend them. You get some help from local manufacturing from their state and the cities and counties and to try to help manufacturing. But the federal government just said, well, sorry, you go bankrupt, goodbye, ta-da, so long. But they don't think that way. They subsidize and keep their manufacturing, their steel, and they flood the market with steel. Dan D'Amico, wherever he is, I saw him here in his great book, American Made. If you'd like to see somebody puncture some of the theories of free trade, read Dan's recent book. It's really valuable. But I just would say to you, we can do better. We have to do better. American people are beginning to suffer. Our ability to lead in the world and be a positive force for the world is diminished if we don't have a vibrant economy, and we cannot have a vibrant economy without manufacturing. I just don't see how it's possible. And I appreciate this conference. That's just some of my thoughts. It kind of combines politics, and it combines where I think the needle has been moving. And so we've gone from a Congress that's pretty much willing to vote for any trade agreement that comes down the pike to one that now is very dubious, particularly this monstrosity, this TPP. So thank you all for letting me share these thoughts. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you and look forward to working with you in the years to come. Thank you.